order to hit, or they believe it was an inside job, or whatever conspiracies they believe because they don't have any facts in front of them, that potentially incites the next level of violence and next event in retaliation for this. So we are only begging for your job as it relates to being the director, as well as the men and women that you are protecting as their director, that you keep them safe by making sure that the Americans will have the information that they need so that they can feel as if Secret Service is on the side of the American people. And ma'am, I don't doubt the Secret Service is on the side of the American people. But right now, so long as these conspiracy theories continue to fester, it is going to make your job that much harder. Thank you so much, and I yield.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cheadle, I'd like to remind you that you're under oath. The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, intelligence team, a counter sniper element and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our
In this
questions.
forum, I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
That is correct.
Answer the question.
I'm not names of our personnel.
Why not?
Today.
The American people are demanding these answers from you today, Ms. Cheadle.
I will do the best to provide you accurate information based on the facts that I have at this time.
You're not answering our questions. The advance element coordinates with other intel or law enforcement partners, identifies threats and weaknesses at the sites and movements. We'd like a copy of the advance report. Have you brought it here with you today?
We will comply with the request for the documentation that has been requested.
When will that be, Ms. Cheadle? Because you should have brought it today.
I am certain that our personnel are working on obtaining all of that documentation.
I don't believe you, and neither do the people watching this hearing. You're not doing well, as Mr. Moskowitz informed you. You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions. Was there a protective intelligence team, and what technical resources were utilized for that event, specifically drone or helicopter assets?
There were a number of technical assets that were deployed for that event, and there was a protective intelligence team that was assigned to that event.
Why was Crooks able to fly a drone over the entire area the day of the rally and the day of his assassination attempt?
To my knowledge, he did not fly the drone over the entire area.
How did he fly a drone over the area, period? Any part of the area?
Again, I would have to go back and check the timeline of when that took place and when the event.
Why didn't you bring the timeline with you today to answer our questions?
I don't have all of the answers on the timelines based on the criminal investigation.
Were you not prepared today to answer our questions?
I am prepared to answer the questions based on the information and wanted to be able to provide.
Do you have a timeline that do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job. Let's talk about things that are prohibited in Trump rallies. And I've been to a lot of Trump rallies. Backpacks and bags, bicycles, firearms, any type of weapon, or any other item determined to be a potential safety hazard, like a rangefinder would be one. At 5:10, Crooks is first observed by one of the snipers, AGR Sniper 1, at the building. 5:10, President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. 5:28, AGR Sniper 1 takes a picture of a bicycle and 2 bags. Those belong to Crooks. 5:32, AGR Sniper 1 spots Crooks looking at his phone and using a rangefinder. 5:55, Butler ESU Command confirms receipt of photos and states they have been relayed on. 6:05 p.m., AGR Sniper 1 later communicates that Crooks is seen moving northeast in direction of Sheets and that Crooks has a backpack. 2 minutes before the shooting, While President Trump has been allowed to take the stage, people see Crooks laying on his stomach in a sniper position on the roof, and they're yelling he has a gun, and they are trying to alert law enforcement and Secret Service. Why was Crooks not shot by the snipers? Why was he allowed to be there?
As soon as the individual was identified as a threat, they were...
No. What do you consider to be a threat? A man with a gun laying in a sniper position, a man that had a backpack, a man that had a bicycle, a man that had a rangefinder. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheadle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheadle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew, that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? No. Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer that question. Director.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
We're waiting for your letter. We are waiting for your letter of resignation, and you really need to consider doing that before you leave today.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Ms. Presley from Massachusetts.
Thank you. No one, absolutely no one should fear for their life at a political rally, in a classroom, in a faith house, or in their home. We must do something about political violence in all its forms and gun violence in all of its forms. Now, Director Cheadle, you have noted that numerous investigations are ongoing related to the Secret Service response, and that we can expect a report in the next 60 days. With the election nearly 100 days away, that is an unacceptable timeline, and it makes people less safe. It also allows my colleagues across the aisle, Republicans, additional time to spread dangerous misinformation, which also puts people in harm's way. Some Republicans have exploited this moment to continue to attack progress towards racial justice and gender equity in America. Disappointing, but not surprising. I hesitate to repeat their racist and sexist tropes, but in summary, Republicans have wrongfully and shamefully stated that hiring women and people of color hindered the response to the shooting. Now, this is part and parcel of Republican strategy to constantly attack necessary diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, to undermine the contributions that women, people of color, the disability community, and others make to this country each and every day. And it is disgraceful. In the wake of gun violence and tragic loss of life, Republicans are ignoring solutions like gun safety reform and instead trotting out sexist tropes. Can't say I'm surprised. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record reporting from CNN titled "Right-Wing Media Figures Blame Women in Secret Service and DEI for Security Failure in Trump Shooting."
Without objection to order.
This article quotes members of Congress and others that plainly accuse DEI and the hiring of women as a liability for the Secret Service. Women have been an integral part of the agency since 1971 and are held to the same standards as their male counterparts. To use them as a scapegoat during a time of crisis is shameful and it is dangerously divisive. In fact, based on recent publicly available demographic data of the agency, the largest demographic groups among special agents are white and male. But to right-wing extremists, the truth doesn't matter. The lies they tell to advance their anti-diversity agenda, which is a key theme throughout Project 2025, will only make the American public less safe and more divided. And every day, Director Cheadle, that you fail to give us answers, they are given more oxygen to make their baseless claims that women and people of color are responsible for tragic events. And that is dangerous too. Thank you. And I yield my remaining time to Ranking Member Raskin.
Thank you to the distinguished gentlelady from Massachusetts, and thank you for those trenchant insights. I wanted to make the point that you were making and several of other members were making to bring it into sharp relief here. The very same day that Donald Trump narrowly escaped an assassination attempt, but an honored firefighter was gunned down and killed and other people were injured. There was another mass shooting that day, just several hours later in Birmingham, Alabama. 4 people killed and 10 wounded in a nightclub shooting. And you might think, oh, that's some kind of freakish coincidence. Not at all. We have more than one mass shooting a day in America. They are so commonplace now that they are barely reported in the national news. It's, of course, local news in Birmingham, Alabama, that 4 people were killed and 10 other people were shot and seriously wounded, being treated at the hospital. These things are a nightmare for the families of the victims who've been killed, for the families who have to take care of people who've been seriously injured and wounded. They are a major financial drain, publicly and privately, and yet we allow AR-15s to be purchased with abandon, promiscuously, all over the country. People can just go out and get an assault weapon. And the distinguished gentlelady from Michigan was right. We have a hearing when it affects the President of the United States, but on all the other days of the year, we don't have a hearing about it. And I think it is because of an honest disagreement we have about the Second Amendment. There are some people who think the Second Amendment means you've got the right to arm yourself with whatever weaponry you need to overthrow the government of the United States, and we reject that as a false interpretation of the Second Amendment and a false interpretation of the Constitution. We can ban assault weapons. We did it back in 1994. It dramatically reduced these mass shootings, and when that ban was lifted, the mass shootings went up through the roof again, and we've shown it. And so just like we're demanding real answers and real action from the Secret Service, let us demand real action and real answers from ourselves about the nightmare of mass gun violence, which puts America into a category all its own when you compare us to the countries in the European Union or Canada or other similarly situated countries. There's nothing like what we're going through. So we've got to act on the Secret Service to protect ourselves against political violence, and we've got to act as a Congress to protect ourselves against AR-15 violence in America.
Chair recognizes Ms. McClain from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I want to thank the Secret Service agents, those who work tirelessly to protect our president, and specifically those agents who did not hesitate to jump in front of President Trump. And my heart goes out to the family of the Comptoir family and the people at the rally who are still recovering. On the other hand, the Secret Service has a leadership problem, and it falls on you. And although I appreciate your hollow words that the buck stops here, I was actually hoping for some answers. Director Cheadle, you must answer to the American people if you want to stay in charge. It's really, really simple. You want to keep your job, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. The best way to keep your job is to answer the questions, not play this shell game, not sing the Slim Shady song, wasn't me. I mean, come on. How long did you prepare for this hearing?
I've been preparing for this hearing over the weekend and into last week.
Okay, 5 days, 6 days?
As soon as I was notified
And how long was that?
about this hearing,
Okay, 4 days,
I began preparing.
4 days, 3 days?
I'm not sure the date that I got the letter asking me to be here.
What are you sure of? Are you sure the color of your hair? Are you sure the color of your suit? I'm just, like, tell the American people, what are you sure of? You don't even know when you started preparing for the hearing? I mean, the biggest hearing of your life, and you have no clue? You can't remember when you started preparing for this hearing? Can you understand why those words seem hollow to the American people who are supposed to entrust their faith in you?
I assure you, the moment I received notification.
But you can't remember. You got a little Alzheimer's, dementia going? I mean, what, you can't remember.
I have several active investigations going on and an operational agency to run.
Okay. All right. But you want to take accountability, right? The buck stops with you, right?
I am taking accountability.
Super. Then let's start with trying to answer some questions. You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosive in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
Is there a
investigation.
name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain.
Who at the
All right, here we go.
FBI
I'm
is
not
running the
certain. I
investigation.
don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the
Did they
they've collected.
share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for their
How
investigation
many were there?
and their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's
Wasn't
do
that
that.
was
Let's
necessary.
for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent
What
to talk.
is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related
I'm
to the
asking
events
you
on
an
that day.
answer to the question. If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything up.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
I would leave it to the criminal investigation to answer questions related to that.
When you talk to the FBI and you ask them how many explosives, well, let me ask you, did you ask them how many explosives were on the roof? Did they answer that question? Or in the car, excuse me. Did they answer that question for you?
Yes.
Yes. So you know the answer to that question that my colleagues have asked you. But again, you refuse to give us the answers. You're playing this wasn't me. Well, I submit to you, if you can't, and it's not a can't, it's a won't. It's not a can't. It's not a I don't know. It's a I choose not to answer the question. Well, let me tell you, Ms. Cheadle, if you're going to lead, you need to lead. If you want to be in charge, then answer the question or step aside and have someone with the courage and the guts to answer to the American people the questions that they deserve answers to. And with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to continue down that vein. You have been here sitting today, Director Cheadle, definitively able to dismiss erroneous information and speculation. However, you are refusing to answer questions that we now know that you have the information for. You are saying that you are wanting to answer questions that the Secret Service has information to. Well, ma'am, you are the Secret Service. You are the director. You have said that you are the best for the job. So I'm going to ask you some questions now knowing that you do have answers from the FBI, whom you have been passing the buck to this entire day. And I'll start with something that, maybe the FBI doesn't know because it has to deal with you personally. You said you spoke with President Trump after the assassination attempt. And I want to know, did you apologize to him directly for nearly having President Trump killed?
Yes, I did.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you recognize that this was your failure. Now, since the assassination attempt, you are under oath, reminding you, have you communicated with anyone at the White House on an encrypted messaging app like Signal? Yes or no?
No, I have not.
Are you willing to surrender your personal phone for analysis?
If I am required to do so.
Okay. I will look into making that request because I would like to see your personal phone to see if you're communicating over encrypted messaging apps. Have you ever turned down enhanced security requests from Donald Trump's detail, his special agent in charge, Sean Curran? Have you ever turned that down?
No, I have not.
Have there been, has your team, has the Secret Service? Maybe not you personally.
I believe, as I mentioned earlier, there are times when requests are made for
And you have
assets,
denied them. They have been denied.
and a denial doesn't
Has the Trump
necessarily
campaign
mean,
made requests for additional assets that have been denied?
Denial doesn't mean vulnerability.
Have there been additional requests for enhanced security at Mar-a-Lago?
We have made a number of enhancements to.
You confirmed that there were
security.
bomb-sniffing dogs that were provided. You failed to confirm if there were aerial security surveillance assets that were provided. So yes or no, was that provided?
At the rally?
At the rally, yes, ma'am.
We had Overwatch provided at the rally.
You've confirmed that the assassin was identified as suspicious 57 minutes prior to the shooting. Was the suspicious individual ever approached by an agent? Was any contact ever made with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that the standard protocol for someone who is identified as suspicious?
The protocol would be to locate the individual and.
And you said that
conduct
he
an
was
interview.
located 2 to 5 times approximately?
No, I said that the information was passed potentially somewhere between 2 to 5
And he was never
times.
located by an agent?
To my knowledge, that individual was not located by an agent.
We have dozens of rally goers who have identified him and not one agent on the ground. There are many, many, many agents on the ground, local law enforcement, Secret Service. No one was able to identify him and have sights on and see him.
What I'm saying is that the agents that were on the ground at the time, I have no knowledge that they were able to interview him or locate him.
Thank you. Was there a local law enforcement officer who approached the roof and saw the shooter and saw that he was present on the roof?
That is the information that has been shared with me.
Have you spoke to that local law enforcement officer?
No, I have not.
Are you going to?
It is part of a criminal investigation that the
Are you going to-
FBI is interviewing those individuals.
Were agents stationed on the water tower?
No,
Why?
that would not be something that would be included in a security plan.
Has the man who is reported to have been present wearing a gray suit who allegedly requested a photo of the dead body of the assassin on top of the AGR roof been identified?
I don't have that information.
Is that something that you've heard of?
No.
Were ATF agents present at the rally?
To attend or to work?
To work.
Not to my knowledge.
How long did the counter sniper have crooks in his sights before the shooter opened fire on President Trump?
I don't have that specific timeline.
Will you be able to tell us if he communicated with other agents on what he was seeing through his sights?
Once I have that information, absolutely.
Because we need to know why he waited for multiple rounds to be fired at President Trump before the threat was neutralized. We need to know if he was given an order to hold fire. Now, you've excused the roof of being unmanned because of the slope of the roof. Do you continue to assert the slope of the roof as a credible reason for leaving this position undefended?
First, I'll go back and correct that there was no order to hold fire. Our agents and officers have the ability to neutralize a threat at the time
So you
that
don't
they
know,
see it.
I'm sorry, you don't know the communication that was taking place or how long he had him in his sights because you haven't spoke to him, but you do know that there was no order to hold fire.
I can tell you the way that our personnel are trained. They are trained on the use of force scale, that when they see a threat, they are authorized to neutralize that threat. They don't have to ask for permission.
You excused the roof being unmanned because of the slope. Do you stand by that assertion?
The roof was not covered with an individual on it because there was overwatch provided.
Apparently not. No, there was no overwatch provided. This is very evident. President Trump was shot. A man died. There was no oversight provided. I find this rather maddening, especially now knowing that you do have answers from the FBI, who you have been passing the buck to this entire hearing, not answering a congressional hearing, members of Congress, while you are under oath and under a subpoena. I find it maddening that the director, that our country has come centimeters away from oblivion under your watch. You have answers. You are refusing to give those to us, directing us to the FBI, and this entire thing is a waste of time. You are responsible for the loss of a life and the shooting that took place on President Trump. You do need to resign. This is bipartisan. You need to be fired. You do not need to hold this position. You are not the best for this job. I am over my time, but I cannot tolerate your watch any longer, and I'm going to continue to call daily for you to be removed from your position, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Mr. Fry from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheadle, how long have you been with the Secret Service? 29 years, right?
That's correct.
And how long have you been director of the Secret Service?
Just under 2 years.
During your tenure as director under the Secret Service, I know we're here today to talk about the assassination attempt on President Trump, but how many other security lapses have occurred with protectees under your watch?
I don't have a specific number, but there have been some lapses.
There have been other lapses. Was one of them Jake Sullivan?
Yes, sir.
What happened there?
There was an individual who was able to access Mr. Sullivan's residence.
His residence. A protectee, somebody was able to break into his house. And what happened? Did anyone get fired because of that?
There were individuals who have been reassigned.
Reassigned. What other steps have taken? What I'm seeing. What other incidents have occurred other than Jake Sullivan? Was there an issue with the Secret Service agent and Vice President Harris?
I would not call that a security incident.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, you have security lapses with President Trump. You have security lapses with Jake Sullivan. You have issues with your personnel related to Vice President Kamala Harris. There seems to be a repeated theme here. Would you not agree with that?
I think that we are talking about separate categories of incidents.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think there's a repeated theme when you've got protectees and you're not upholding your core mission. Let me ask you something else. Does the Secret Service routinely record communications between and amongst detail?
Radio communications?
Any communication?
Email communications are captured, as well as text messages, and then depending on the detail, radio communications are recorded.
Does the Secret Service have recorded communications from the July 13th event?
We do not have radio communications from that day.
But you have text messages?
We do have emails and text messages.
Emails, okay, great. Does the head of the Trump detail or someone else embedded in this detail have command decision-making authority, or do they need to seek authorization from someone outside that detail?
The head of the detail has the decision-making authority for things that are necessary for that detail.
Is that standard for protection details?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Let me ask you something. During campaign events, is it common for the Secret Service to utilize other agencies?
Yes, it is.
What other agencies would be providing assistance to the Secret Service?
There are a number of other agencies that provide assistance to the Secret Service during campaigns. We utilize personnel from the Department of Homeland Security. We utilize personnel from the Department of Defense, and we utilize local law enforcement partners.
Are you on the same radios? Do you provide the radios to all the assets that are taking part in protection of an event?
We provide radios to the personnel from the Department of Homeland Security that are assisting us.
But not local law enforcement?
Local law enforcement is working on their own radios.
Are you on the same frequency?
We ensure that we have counterparts in the security room, and so the local law enforcement will place one of their personnel in the security room with our personnel so that we have interoperability communications.
Let me ask you something just about the timeline, because I think this is really interesting that we can't nail that down. I mean, I think there are lay people out there with more knowledge about the timeline than you seem to come before a subpoena in front of Congress. Was Mr. Crooks observed at the AGR building prior to the shooting?
He was observed on the grounds outside of our perimeter prior to the shooting.
At approximately what time was that? You don't have to give me the specific minute, but at approximately what time was that?
I believe it was about 45 minutes or so prior to.
Did the sniper team take a photo of Mr. Crooks?
The local team did, yes.
So it was a local team and not a Secret Service sniper?
That took the photo.
Okay. And did he relay that photo to Central Command?
Again, it's an active ongoing investigation, so I want to make sure that I'm factual with the route that photo took and who that was disseminated to and when.
What time did when did Mr. Crooks' status go from a suspicion, a person that was under suspicion, to a threat? When did that happen? And maybe not even a specific time, Director Cheadle, maybe a certain event that happened that transformed him from a person of suspicion to a threat. When did that happen?
To the best of my knowledge, based on what I have been told thus far, it's approximately 5 minutes to where individuals relayed that there was an incident being worked at the 3 o'clock of the president.
So that was, but it was before the shots were fired? that
is correct, but again, it was not phrased as a threat. It was just that something was being worked.
Yeah, but my question is, when did he become, when did he transform from suspicion to threat? Because they're treated very differently. People can be suspicious, but they're not a threat until a certain point in time. So when did that happen?
I believe that it was seconds before the gunfire started.
Seconds. My gosh, we actually have a few questions that we got answered today. Listen, I'm going to wrap up here, Mr. Chairman, but here's the frustration that people have. The buck stops with you. You've said that yourself. But the problem in Washington, D.C., it is the only town in America that you can be so bad at your job that you actually get a promotion or don't get fired. You have not been able to answer the number of agents, whether or not requests were denied on additional security, whether or not law enforcement were able to engage before the shooting with the assassin, how he got on the roof, how the rifle got on the roof. You can't tell us how many shots he fired, whether the casings were recovered. You can't tell us anything about his cell phone. You can't tell us whether the rally was supposed to be postponed, given the intelligence that you were receiving. You can't tell us whether the car had a bomb. You can't even tell us his motive. And the American people are incredibly distrustful because it has taken 9 days to even get a scintilla of evidence out of you. Maybe if I was CNN or ABC or NBC, I would have gotten much more thorough and accurate information, but we have not received that in a subpoenaed hearing in front of this Congress. That is why the American people are frustrated, and I echo the bipartisan calls on this committee and all across this country that you should resign, or maybe when the president wakes up from his nap, he can fire you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Director Sheetal, can you please give me the names of the individuals who are in charge of your conduct for the rally?
I'm not going to release names.
Can you give me the
today.
titles? And how many individuals?
No.
Nothing?
We had a full advance team that was responsible for advancing
How many
the site.
people are the final approval authority?
There are a number of people
Can you
that
give me a
are
number?
engaged in approving
Can you
the
give
plan.
me a number?
No, I do not have
Okay.
a firm number.
Can you just confirm whether or not, I understand this is an open investigation, but in order to dispel conspiracy theories, have you guys been able to subpoena the shooter's Discord records, or has the FBI, to your knowledge?
I believe that the FBI is working on those.
Okay. Is it factual to say that you have not ruled out that the shooter was working with other people or persons?
Again, the FBI is conducting the criminal investigation into
Can
the
you,
shooter.
at least in an effort to dispel conspiracy theories, can you confirm or deny that?
At this time, we do not have that there were any other people engaged.
So you believe he was acting alone?
I do.
Okay. Have you been made aware of multiple eyewitness reporting that there was a second shooter on a water tower?
I do not have any information related to any second shooter.
Okay, the reason I asked that is because according to testimony from multiple witnesses, they did report that. And again, to my understanding, there were over 40 sniper teams that were briefed by the Butler ESU. And I want to make sure that people are aware, if you're saying that there's not another shooter, that we are able to clear that information, because from this whole entire briefing, it doesn't seem like much information has been able to get out to the American people. So I'm trying to dispel rumors, as I'm sure you understand. Was it true that Secret Service was present at the Butler ESU briefing?
There was a briefing between the counter sniper teams that were working
Secret
on the
Service
ground.
present?
Yes, to my knowledge.
Okay, I want to read you a report from people that seem to be throwing you under the bus and stated that they were in attendance and that Secret Service was not in attendance at the security briefing, according to individuals with knowledge, to also include that the AGR building where the shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks was located was actually not a part of their security perimeter for that. So there was not Secret Service present. It seems as though that when you were asked earlier from Rep. Krishnamurthy about whether or not Secret Service was aware of a threat, you had said no, they were unaware of a threat. And yet, according to communications, again, from law enforcement that were in some of these group chats, they actually had reported that Secret Service was made aware of a threat at around 5:59 p.m. as a part of the command, including Secret Service, aware of messages and requests about information about the suspect's location. Can you please tell me if you have knowledge of that at all?
Again, I think we're conflating the difference between the term threat and suspicious.
But you guys did have knowledge at 5:59 p.m. according to those group chats, did you not?
Of a suspicious individual.
Okay. Chairman, in my opinion, according to some of the testimony today, I feel that you have perjured yourself in some instances. And so I'm going to ask for a full review of the transcripts by staff. And if you find that to be the case, I do ask that you bring perjury charges against the director. I will say this, it is very frustrating, and I've talked to my colleagues and we've said it to your face, that you have been up here basically stonewalling our ability to get the answers to the American people. And what I will also say is that every single member of Congress does not feel safe with you in charge. You have heard that, and I think that we are all sitting ducks with you in directing the Secret Service currently. But more importantly, it sends a message to our adversaries that we are not protected, and we are one of the strongest countries in the world, so you have essentially made us a less safe country because of it. As a result of that, I'm asking you to formally step down. I share my same opinions as my Democrat colleagues. And I also think that your efforts to bring forward a full investigation and report in 60 days is unacceptable. And as a result of that, I'm going to do everything in my legislative toolkit to ensure that that happens sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that you know that we brought a vote on inherent contempt against Garland for essentially blocking a congressional investigation, and I don't think that you should be any different. So I will say that I am just completely disgusted by your performance today, and I understand that you're probably in a position where you're being told not to testify, which is why we had to subpoena you. I think that goes back to Garland. But again, that is part of the flushing that we need to get out of Washington, and I would be happy to assist in that process. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Langworthy from New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you bringing this hearing forward with a subpoena. Director, yesterday I made the decision to get in my car and drive to Butler, Pennsylvania in preparation for this moment and asking you questions about the events of the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. I've done several presidential events prior in my career, and I wanted to see this site with my own two eyes because I don't believe the video footage tells the whole story or looking at things on a diagram. And I was absolutely appalled when I went to the site, when I saw the fact that I could have stood on the roof of that building, the AGR building, and hit that podium with a 9-iron, and I'm a lousy golfer. And the fact that that was not included in the perimeter is a complete dereliction of the duty of the U.S. Secret Service. I mean, there are very few rooftops that needed to be secured. And the fact that the Secret Service, as they were putting a site plan in place, did not think it was necessary to man those rooftops, you have completely walked away from your duties. You had one job, and that's to protect the future President of the United States or to protect all of the other protectees. And President Trump is only here today by God's grace because he had just something in him that made him turn his head just slightly, or we would be in a national period of mourning right now. And you have done nothing here today. I've rewritten these questions like 4 times during your hearing, and you haven't answered a damn one of them. You haven't given any information. You have hidden behind this FBI investigation, and I think you should be ashamed of yourself because you have brought more shame to your agency than I think that the assassination attempt has at this point. This is literally the worst performance I have ever seen in front of a congressional hearing. You have offered no reason for this committee, this body, or the American people to trust you or the Secret Service today. And you should resign. You have said that you've put new security measures in place after the assassination attempt. Can you tell us what those are? Because the American people want to know that you're taking real corrective measures. But today you've pointed to an investigation. Investigation or not, you still have a job to do with a zero-fail mission. But so far, there's been absolutely no accountability, and you've admitted that here today. Not one person's been suspended. Not one person's been put on a desk. Meanwhile, we've got the most contentious of elections in our nation's history, and protectees are in danger because of incompetent leadership. Not the agents. The agents piled on President Trump to protect his life. Those are heroes. But the administrators running your agency, they're not right now. They're not doing their jobs, and you certainly aren't doing. The most appalling part of Saturday's events is the countless opportunities that Secret Service had to stop Crooks before he even got on the roof. At 3 o'clock, Crooks raised suspicion by entering the rally with a rangefinder. At 5:45, a cop with a Beaver County Emergency Services unit saw Crooks eyeballing the roof at the AGR International Building. And then at 5:55, Secret Service was warned of a suspicious person and identifies Crooks as a threat. This was all before shots were fired 15 minutes later. Director, yes or no, did local law enforcement alert the Secret Service about Crooks' presence at the rally?
Yes, they did.
The shooter came to attention of law enforcement almost an hour before President Trump went on stage. Law enforcement alerted the Secret Service of the shooter. Over and over, you've said there's a difference between a suspicious individual and a threatening individual. Can you explain what the shooter needed to exemplify to be called a threat?
So I'm not clear as to what identified him as suspicious to the individuals who originally clarified him that way. For the Secret Service, for an individual to be determined to be a threat, that individual would have to be seen with a weapon or capable of doing some sort of harm to our protectees.
I mean, Director, an individual walking into a rally with a rangefinder, scoping out an unprotected rooftop, and he reportedly flew a drone over hours before. It sounds like a lot more than suspicious, especially at a presidential rally. Your operational lapses, your resource management, and poor judgment nearly resulted in the assassination of President Trump. I mean, the dereliction of duty here is just appalling. The fact that you haven't visited Butler is just maddening to me. You're not taking this job seriously. Many people here have called for your resignation. I've introduced a resolution here into this body that hopefully will get a vote this week calling on the president to fire you, ma'am. You have not done your job. You have put two black eyes on your agency, and you need to go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Burleson from Missouri.
Director Cheadle, I just want to kind of get an idea of what you can answer, because outside of what the FBI is responsible for, you have full responsibility for the Department of Secret Service. So the question is, what is the mission? Who defines the mission?
Our mission of the Secret Service is to protect the president, the vice president, their immediate families, presidential candidates, the former presidents, and those by executive order. And we also have an investigative mission.
And those are well defined?
Yes, they
Everyone within the agency understands the mission?
Yes, they do.
What about protocols and standards? Who defines the protocols and standards?
We have a number of protocols and policies in place for the various missions that we have.
So would it be safe to say that you failed the mission, the ultimate mission?
I have stated repeatedly here today that there was a failure.
What about specific failures within protocols and guidelines within the agency?
Again, I am certain that the investigation that is being conducted internally as well as the external investigation.
You said earlier in the hearing that there was either a communication, there was errors in communication or in operations. Could it be both? In both errors in operational decisions and errors in communications?
I think the investigation potentially could identify both.
So I want to talk about communications. Representative Boebert asked earlier about using encrypted apps, that you said you have not used, I guess, Signal. Have you used any encrypted app to communicate from your personal device?
I do, on occasion, use encrypted apps to communicate.
So you use some form of an encrypted app to communicate with people within the federal government? With local law enforcement? Whom are you communicating using the encrypted apps?
Many times it's with colleagues and associates.
So you're communicating with colleagues on a personal device?
There are times that the Secret Service, when we work internationally with some of our partners, that they don't have the same texting capability.
And you're not able to do that with your government-issued device?
Recently, we have been able to install some of those apps on government devices.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that we can get access to. I'm actually shocked that you are using your personal device and encrypted communication tools. I think that might be the most shocking thing that I've heard today. I didn't expect for you to say that. We have requested, this committee has requested multiple documents, and this is not, under the purview of the FBI, this is under your purview. We requested a complete list of all law enforcement personnel, including Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, local law enforcement with the roles in protecting the president, and we requested that to be, for us to receive that by July 18th. Did you provide that?
I believe that our agency is in the process of collecting all documents.
So you have not provided it. How long does it take to determine who the personnel were that were on site?
We are collecting a comprehensive list of all the documents that have been requested.
We also requested all the audio and video recordings that your agency, not the FBI, but your agency has in possession related to the event. Did we receive those? Have you provided those at all?
We are in the process of collecting all documentation requested.
You're in the process, but you have not. Any memorandums or any internal communications related to the event? We requested that you provide that. Have you provided any of that?
We are in the process of collecting the information that has been requested.
Okay. So when can we expect to receive these documents? How long does it take to determine who was on site, who was being employed to be there to protect the former president? When can we expect that? How many days does it take to provide that information?
We want to make sure that we have a comprehensive accounting of all of the documents that were engaged in that day, and we will make them available as soon as possible. I
think transparency is the key here. It's shocking to me that we are communicating in a encrypted app to colleagues. I'm almost certain that violates some federal laws.
I would like to clarify, you didn't ask me whether my communications were government work related or whether they were personally related.
You're communicating with colleagues.
I don't communicate government business with colleagues on a personal device. I communicate on my work device.
Are you using an encrypted device on your work device?
I am not.
No encrypted apps?
No, I do not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Waltz from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Director,